Today is the day that we finally talk about Brandon Aiyuk and his potential future with the San Francisco 49ers. This is a topic that I have not really discussed. I haven't even made its own video about it until today. And we'll talk about why from now until April 1st is officially Brandon Aiyuk Watch because his future could look a little different. It will look different regardless on April 1st, and we'll talk about why that is. But you guys already know what to do. Drop an SDS in the chat, smash that like button, and let's get into it all right now. Boom. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is going on, 49er fans? Obviously, we are in the dead of the offseason. The free agency wave and frenzy has officially come to an end. However, there are still signings. We saw 49ers former tight end last year, Eric Saubert, sign with the Seattle Seahawks today. There are signings that are still occurring, but the frenzy is far, far from over. But it definitely is time to kind of dive into a subject that I have honestly been avoiding. And that is the Brandon Aiyuk trade topic. Now, it's kind of funny because all last year, I was all over the Brandon Aiyuk trade smoke, the trade rumors from the very beginning. And I cannot tell you how many people absolutely could not stand every single time I made a video about the latest trade rumors, what we're hearing, what we think could be happening. Oh, they'll never trade Brandon Aiyuk. This page is crazy. They'll never trade Brandon Aiyuk. Never ever. Okay. That's what everyone told me. They said, Brad, you're crazy. The 49ers would never think to trade Brandon Aiyuk. Well, we all know how everything is gone. And we know that the 49ers were absolutely more than willing to trade Brandon Aiyuk to the point where he was actually being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers until famously Kyle Shanahan runs upstairs, stops the conversation from going any further, and he says, no, Brandon Aiyuk isn't going anywhere. He's going to stay. He's going to remain a 49er. So the reason why I'm talking about it today is because I think it is important to address. Now, I won't be talking about this until something credible actually comes out, because if you've kind of been following on Twitter or X, Brandon Aiyuk has been traded probably 17 times, according to unnamed sources and all these different types of things. So he's already been a Patriot. He's already been a Steeler this year. I think he's also already been a Cleveland Brown. I think a couple times over. And so the reason why I'm going to kind of dive into this topic today is because we have a big date coming up, and that is April 1st. And not because it's April Fool's Day. No, because that day has a big time implication on the future of 49ers wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk. So let's get into the situation regarding why this date is so important. So if the San Francisco 49ers have Brandon Aiyuk on the roster in 2000 or on April 1st, 2025, this triggers a roster guarantee not only for 2025 but for 2026. Basically, if Brandon Aiyuk is on the roster beyond April 1st, which is I believe in a about a week from now, that means he will get 22.85 million fully guaranteed for 2025, and in 2026 his full salary will be guaranteed of 24.9 million. So 2 years of Brandon Aiyuk get locked in coming in the next week. So this is where I think the conversation about Brandon Aiyuk potentially getting traded has starting to feel more real, because when this was first approached, when I think it was the NFL Combine, when John Lynch was asked about potentially trading Brandon Aiyuk, he didn't shut down those talks. He didn't say Brandon Ayuk's not available for trade. He didn't say anything. Kind of opened up the door, and that really kind of stoked the fire of the potential Brandon Aiyuk trade situation. So I think ultimately what it's coming down to is the 49ers have an opportunity to get out of Brandon Ayuk's contract, pretty much, is really what it comes down to. I don't think they would be trading him for much of any value. I would honestly be surprised if they got a fifth or a sixth round draft pick. I really do, because he's coming off a major knee injury that isn't fully healthy, and there's no guarantee. Like, we don't know what he will look like. He hasn't been cleared. We have no idea, at least on the public perception of things. I think people still believe he won't be ready for week one. Again, we don't know until we get closer to that date. But the point is that he's injured. And not only is he injured, but they would have to be taking on a massive contract. They would have to be willing to pay him these guarantees that are built into his deal unless they rework his deal upon trading him. So if we take that information and then we compound it with the clear message that is coming from the San Francisco 49ers, that they are in what feels like a cost cutting era. They are trying to reduce spending, they're trying to reduce cash spending. And so if they're not forking over tens of millions of dollars on June 1st, that might be a benefit to them, even if it means they're letting Brandon Aiyuk go for really nothing. So I think there's a way that we can kind of like talk about this, because unfortunately, if you're going to try to view this from strictly a on-field perspective, I don't think it makes the most sense. This conversation has to be had in the front. This is a front office move if they were going to do this. And again, similarly to the Jordan Mason trade, in my opinion, that trade was a front office move. It wasn't a on-field move. I don't think the 49ers got better from the Jordan Mason trade and the value that they got in return for that trade. If they're going to trade Brandon Aiyuk, they aren't going to get better on the field, but they are going to clear a bunch of space. They're going to clear a bunch of room from his salary. They're going to clear tens of millions of dollars of his contract. Effectively, they would be moving on from a 4-year, $110 million contract, which is left on BA's deal. So that's the interesting part of it, because it feels like this current era of 49ers decision making would absolutely do that. if it was like, oh, we'll take a 6th round pick for BA if you just take his whole contract. Like we'll basically just give him to you if you agree to pay the rest of his deal, take on his contract, and they get out of the Brandon Aiyuk business. There's been so many rumors and reports that have said the 49ers are so upset with the Brandon Aiyuk contract. They're still upset that Brandon Aiyuk got paid. And you're trying, like, I remember hearing these and I was like trying to like make sense of it, because I'm like, how are the 49ers upset that they paid Brandon Aiyuk when they were the ones who paid Brandon Aiyuk? And then when you kind of look into, the whole story about how, Kyle Shanahan runs upstairs, stops the trade from happening, green lights the deal, they get it done. Maybe that's the situation that they're upset about. Maybe they're upset about with the fact that they had Aiyuk on the move. They had maybe a 1st round draft pick in return. I don't know what the compensation would have been, maybe a 2nd round pick. But they had a suitor for him to not only give them high draft capital, but to take on his contract. Well, now a year later, they've paid him guaranteed money, and they're going to have to now move him for a fraction of what they could have moved him for. And being healthy and before his contract. And now they just might take whatever just to get out of the contract. So again, I don't perceive it as like a football move. It's more of a front office kind of balancing of the books kind of move. And I think that's one of the hard parts that I think fans, one of the reasons why they don't love the offseason sometimes is because a lot of the moves that are made, they're made with that in mind. They are made, well, we got to get cheaper here, we got to get younger here, we got to make tough decisions in order to accomplish these things. It might not make a ton of sense on the field and maybe translate to winning. At least that's how it's perceived from a fan on-field perspective. But there are moves that are made for other reasons that maybe fans don't kind of rationalize. So I just really think that's where we're kind of at right now, is that the 49ers are kind of course correcting. And in the midst of a course correction, I think anything can happen. I think they've kind of made that clear. So this June 1st date becomes a very interesting date, because I do think there is a chance Brandon Aiyuk gets traded. And again, before I was like, this, it doesn't make sense to me. Like when it first came out, I was like, this just doesn't strike me as something that makes a whole lot of sense, until you realize the cost implications and ramifications, and you start to see like, oh, well, they could basically get out of his deal and they wouldn't have to pay him this guaranteed contract coming up for not only this year, but for 2026. And that right there could be enough for them to be like, you know what? That's enough for us to make this move. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. There's clearly a lot of smoke around this situation. And I've just kind of been sitting back and watching it and seeing everything. I didn't feel the need to talk about it all that much, just because we knew that we've been down this road before, and just we took a different approach. We took an approach of, instead of reporting all of this to you guys, we're just going to wait and see. We're just going to see how it plays out. And so I think we've hit a crucial point in this where we've identified the trigger date, the deadline date, which is April 1st, and you can probably guarantee that if Brandon Aiyuk is on the roster on April 2nd, he will be here on the roster for the next 2 seasons. So that's why I think this next week is going to be a very, very fascinating one, because I do believe that the 49ers are more than willing to trade Brandon Aiyuk. I do think they want to get out of that contract. I do think there's probably bad feelings that were left over from that situation. And they're like, you know what? There's an out. So we're going to try and take it. Now, does that mean he will get traded? Not necessarily. There's got, it takes both sides. And I think I would assume BA would have some kind of say, not to the level that of leverage that he had last time, because his leverage was, I'm not going to sign that contract. You can trade me, but I'm not signing the contract. So that's why he was able to say no to the Patriots and say no to the Browns last year, and was only open to signing a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers or the 49ers. Those were the only teams. And so he said no to the Patriots. He said no to the Browns. But I don't think he has that same power. I don't think he has that same leverage. So he could refuse to play, but I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know what the offsetting language could be in his contract. I just know that if the 49ers are really done with the Brandon Aiyuk situation, they could get out of they could just take the lumps, take the dead cap hit, which they don't seem to care too much about. They take the dead cap hit, they eat whatever money they paid him, for his signing bonus, and they move on and they get out of his deal. And they are able to save about 110 million on his contract overall. So I guess you could kind of treat it like his 5th-year option maybe was a little bit more expensive than 14.1 as it was scheduled to be last year. But we'll see. I said this before. This was one of my big things. I was like, how's he going to pass a physical? Like, it just doesn't seem like it makes sense, because how is he going to do that? And I really do think that I think there is a path where a team can waive the physical if they decided to. There's obviously an option to fail the player with the physical to, cancel the trade or whatever. But I do think they have the ability to also waive that. We're going to send them through regardless of physical. I do think that is a possible option. Don't take my word for it, but I do think that is a potential option. Donald says, what do you think the odds that BA will be traded? This is a great question. It's a great question for the chat as well, because I am curious to see where you guys feel on this, because like I said, I have not made any videos on Brandon Aiyuk getting traded this offseason other than today. Today was my first day since the kind of initial reaction from John Lynch's press conference at the Combine, which was over a month ago at this point, or about a month ago. So I'm curious, what do you guys feel like based on all the information that we know, understanding that the 49ers can effectively get out of his contract and they may be willing to just take the L in the sense of not getting much of anything in return for trade compensation and just say, he's yours now. We're not paying him, you're paying him. I think if there's anything we've seen, the 49ers would be willing to do that. They would definitely prefer someone else to pay him rather than they pay him. Donald says 50-50. 70% he is gone. Justin makes a phenomenal point. Says, I don't know. Look how long they held on to Jimmy. They did, but it doesn't feel like an apples to apples scenario. It feels like the 49ers have an out to get out of BA's contract. That's why the April 1st date is such a pivotal date. With Jimmy and his contract, I think his contract was what it was. Like, there wasn't any like massive triggers that were guaranteeing him onto the roster for years to come. I know they ripped up his deal in order to allow him to play, and they reworked it to be a 1-year deal back then, but it feels like this is an interesting situation because of all the things we've mentioned. The 49ers are clearly in a cost-cutting era, and this is a huge area to cut costs. They drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first. They still have Jawan Jennings. They signed DeMarcus Robinson. Jacob Cowing, we'll see what he can be. Isaiah Hodgins is a guy that I don't think you could sleep on. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I've told you guys, like, I'm not sleeping on the 49ers. I think that they will do any and everything to maintain a certain level of spending, regardless of what that means. Like, that can mean multiple things. So, I don't know. I don't know how it's ultimately going to play out. But I would say, honestly, I would say the main thing that would be holding up this potential trade is just what team is interested, and what is the value of the draft pick that the 49ers would feel comfortable sending him for. I think a part of it has to do with kind of the public perception of the pick, because fans weren't super happy, at least some weren't, with the return of the Deebo Samuel trade where they got a 5th round. It's funny because I thought a 5th round pick for Deebo was perfect value. I was like, "Oh, that's great." I thought the 49ers weren't going to get anything for Deebo, and they were just going to have to cut him. I was like, "Oh, 5th round pick for Deebo, that's great." Meanwhile, on the flip side, I'm like, I don't like the Jordan Mason trade. That trade stinks. But I'm like, oh, 5th round for Deebo? Heck yeah. Brent, come on. That's a great deal. But the reason why the Deebo Samuel was a good deal is because they took on his contract. They reworked it. The Commanders took that $17 million base salary, converted it to fully guaranteed. And then I think they built incentives for that deal to go up to 23, if I'm not mistaken, 20 to 23, somewhere in that range. So they gave the 5th round pick and reworked his deal for what he wanted. And so that worked out to be good for the 49ers. But I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what would the compensation be for a Brandon Aiyuk trade? And I have a hard time seeing a team who's going to take on his contract, and I'm assuming it's going to be as is. So if a team trades for him, they're also going to be getting his contract guaranteed of, I think it was like 24 million, 22.8 million fully guaranteed on the first for 2025, and then to 24.9 million fully guaranteed for 2026. So I'm just assuming that the team would be taking that. They'd be like, "We'll take the guarantees for both years." At that point, like third max, if I'm a team trading for BA, I love BA. You guys know I'm a big fan of BA. But if I'm a general manager playing the general manager game, I don't know if I would give a team like the 49ers more than a 6th round pick for BA. And that's no disrespect to BA. I think BA is a great player. I think BA, you guys know how I feel about BA. We know how that goes. But if you're putting your business hat on, you're taking on 2 years of guaranteed money. His knee is currently TBD. We don't know. We don't know when he'll be back. Is it week 1? Is it week 4? We don't know. Is he going to be fully back? Those are all considerations that go into the fact that I'm paying him guaranteed money for 2 years and he's hurt. I don't know how you could give a 3rd rounder. BA in a vacuum healthy is easily worth a 1st round draft pick. But I think that's where the conversation gets challenging, is because if you are the team doing the trading for, how can you be like, well, we're going to give you a 3rd round pick for a receiver that we got to pay 2 years guaranteed up front without knowing that he's fully healthy. That's the part. Whereas if I put myself in a opposing general manager's GM, having a conversation with John Lynch and kind of going through that dynamic of like, what does this trade conversation look like? I'm sure a lot of the conversation is like, listen, man, like he's coming off injury. We don't know when he's going to be healthy. And again, this is just speculating on the information that we have. We're paying him 2 years, 25, 26, about over about $50 million guaranteed. We're giving, best we can do is a 6th. So I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that looks. I mean, if you could get a 3rd for BA under these current circumstances, I would have to say Lynch is up to something to be able to pull a 3rd for BA, just considering the circumstances. So I don't know what's going to happen. I just think that it's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on within the next week, because I do believe that the 49ers are very interested in getting out of this contract. Speedy says, why not let them play and potentially raise his value, then look to trade him around the deadline? I think a part of that has to do with the fact that his 2026 is also fully guaranteed on April 1st. It's not just his 2025 that's fully guaranteed. His next 2 seasons are fully guaranteed on April 1st. It is a big deadline date for the money and the business side of things. I would say that this would make sense, Speedy, if it was only his 2025 season that was fully guaranteed, and then you could trade him mid-season or whatever to try to, get his value up. But that's, I think, the problem is that It's his 2026 season that is also being guaranteed. Uh, so, hey, Speedy, I'm right there with you. I like talking about football, um, but for whatever reason, this 49ers football team has us talking about a lot of other things than football. It's probably why there are so many content creators. It's probably why so many people talk about this team because they give us unlimited things to talk about. Um, so it's going to be quite the ride. And I think the funniest part about this all is that it all falls on April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. Can you imagine how many fake Brandon Aiyuk trade posts that we're going to get? Um, it is going to be a tough one, man. You better be on your P's and Q's. You better be double, triple checking the accounts that you're seeing this information from. If it's not coming from me, it's not real. um, you're going to have fake Adam Schefters, fake Ian Rappaports, fake Tom Palaceros, fake Jordan Schultz, fake, who knows, maybe you'll even get a fake SF Niners. But you're gonna have to be on your P's and Q's on April 1st. I don't know the exact time that like that it needs. I'm assuming like a 1 p.m. Pacific Standard time, potentially. Not positive. Um, but we'll see, man. It's going to be a fascinating day. Mike says, "What am I going to troll you with?" I've never been a participator in April Fools. I'm going to be honest. I don't think in all the years that I've done this, I don't think I've ever participated in it. So I wouldn't expect too much from me. You guys are safe from me. there's there's gonna be too many others out there running shenanigans. I typically don't like to, just because you know it's already hard enough out there in these streets for independents to gain any form of credibility, let alone throwing that away on some troll fake update. I don't know, just never been something I've partaked in. I let the others uh take care of that for sure. So we'll see. Have I seen Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts? I have not. I have not. Have I watched Charles Grant? I've heard of him. He's one of the small schools. Um, I know Brandon Thorne is. I know Brandon Thorne is big on him. I just haven't got to his tape. but I know Thorne likes him a lot. Yeah, William and Mary, small school guy. I know, like I said, I know Thorne is a big fan of him. I just haven't got to his tape yet. I've seen a little bit of him, not a lot, because he kind of went a little viral during the where did he go? He went a little viral during the NFL Combine. So I saw some of the clips that came along with him in that situation. But I haven't done a deep dive on him or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. But, the situation with BA, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it goes. We'll see where it leads. And I think it's safe to say we're just going to have to be patient and wait until April 1st to see how it all plays out. And if anything pops off, we'll, of course, be talking about it. And until then, we'll see how it plays out. But appreciate everyone for tapping in. Make sure you smash that like button. I'm out for now. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see you.